March. It's a great time to get back in the garden, isn't it? Well, it was last week. This week we've got snow. Welcome to MoggyBoxCraft. I'm Deborah and welcome to my garden in March. So I've been busy clearing out the garden from all the old plants, the debris, the last year's annuals, trying to tidy it up a bit, cutting back branches, revitalising and giving all the plants that are left in the garden a little bit of a boost with some feed. I also decided to clear out my raised beds completely and start afresh this year. Well, mostly start afresh, but we'll get on to that in a minute. Faraway bed, the first bed I tackled, had random garlic and potatoes in it. And random carrots that I sowed far too late. They were really little, so all the birds were eating them. I've just dug everything out, fluffed it up all a little bit, removed any stones. Then using the mesh that I separate my vegetables with, I've put that on top to stop the cats pooping. And just hold it in place with those little tent peg things. Also clear up the last of the leaves. They'll be great for the compost. In the middle bed, there's asparagus and some old potatoes that have been there far too long. I left the asparagus to grow last year and just let that die back over winter. So cut back all that old foliage. So hopefully I'll get my first crop of asparagus this year. That bed also had potatoes in it. It's not great, it's really not great. So I've dug out all the potatoes. However, one of the biggest problems I have in my raised bed is a problem that I caused myself. So here's a good tip for any of you newbie gardeners. So I didn't know the difference between soil and compost. Soil is usually used to describe soil for under paving stones and that kind of stuff. Not for growing in. Compost is what you want. Who knew? The stuff I've got, as you can see, is really clay based. Clay soil, I would say, is mostly bad, but can be good. It is apparently very nutritious for plants growing in. However, it's really hard to dig vegetables out of and also restricts root growth. If you have got clay soil, you can mix in loads of natural ingredients, compost, your leaves. Don't mix in sand, it makes it worse. This clay soil is in all three of my raised beds. So over the last few years, I have been trying to rectify this mistake by mixing in lots of extra compost and leaves and all that jazz. And it's not working at all. Decided this is the year I'm going to tackle it, one bed at a time. And the middle bed is the bed that's going to be done first. So I've scraped off the top layer of soil that's semi-okay. That's all the soil I've tried to mix into it to help everything grow. I've distributed that around the garden, mostly in the black planters next to my raised beds. Everything that's left in that bed now, I'm just going to have to slowly get rid of and replace with as much as I can from my own garden making compost. But I think I'm going to have to look at buying some decent quality compost. It's a lot of work right now, but in the long run, I think it'll be worth it. In the last bed, I had spring onions, parsnips, carrots and chives. Usually carrots and parsnips are perfect to be left stored in the ground over winter. However, these carrots were not looking that great, so I thought I'll just pull the spring onions, and I will leave the parsnips because they're great over winter. Actually, a good frost makes them sweeter, apparently. I've also left the chives because, well, I don't know where their permanent home is going to be. I just plopped them in there over winter until I figured it out this year. I'd also like to be doing some painting around the garden at the moment, but until it's 10 degrees or over, that's going to have to wait. I also wanted to give you an update on my spring flower circles in the grass. The first flowers that appeared were snowdrops, and then all of a sudden the irises appeared. I mean, you can kind of see them here in the snow. It's a bit of a shame they've been crushed by the snow. I'm hoping they'll survive. I've also seen a bit of the tulips popping through. It'll take a couple of years to establish, but I have high hopes. So in the hopes that the flower circles are a success, I think it's time to tidy up the wildflower area. I started cutting down the old foliage with some secateurs. However, I did find it easier just to rip out my hands and just scrunch it up. All the dry foliage is somewhere the bugs can live over winter. So I didn't want to get rid of it. So I've just scrunched it up and then just distribute it all over that area. So once I flattened the whole area, I thought I'd give it a feed with this granulated plant food. Just a wee sprinkle all over. And then as an added layer of insulation, hopefully, I've sprinkled on some sawdust. We have it left over for cutting wood, so I thought I might as well just use it up. And over winter, I store all the leftover compost from my planters from the greenhouse in a ton bag. I've mixed it in with other bits of debris from the garden to help it break down and add a little bit of nutrients back in there. And I'm just spreading that all over the top. I wasn't sure if I was going to add more seeds to the wildflower area, but I found some extra seeds. So I think maybe the end of April, maybe in May, I'll sprinkle them over the top, another layer of compost, and just use up those seeds. So I don't know what else I'm going to do with them otherwise. But for now, I'm going to wait to see what starts growing back and if I need to add those extra seeds and maybe what I'd like to add next year. Let's head into the greenhouse. If you can hear that drip, just know at least the snow is melting. This is also the time I like to start my hanging baskets. Every autumn I empty them out so I can start fresh every year. There ain't going to be any nutrients left in those baskets by the end of the year. This year I've got 6 baskets because I broke one. I find it quite difficult to keep my hanging baskets watered in the summer. So I like to line them with a shopping bag. Just take any plastic shopping bag, cut it in half, whack it in the basket, then trim off around the edges. And then put your soil on top of that. You can put drainage holes in them if you want, but I don't. Just makes life easier and helps to retain water over the summer, or the hot weather anyway. Not that we really have summer that much, but you know what I mean. You're in no danger of getting waterlogged in summer. You just have to water sparingly at the moment. This year for my potting mix, I am just going to use a general purpose compost, along with some granulated plant food. Just whack that in. I've also got perlite. Improves aeration and drainage for healthy root growth, rootings, cuttings and potting on. I've also got some vermiculite. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that helps maintain moisture and nutrients and improve seed germination. Add in a good sprinkle of that and give it a good mix. So I'm going to be using this mix for my seedlings, for my hanging baskets and any pots. So I like to go in my hands and break up all those clumps of compost. For my flowers this year, well, for the hanging baskets anyways, I'm going to use bedding plants from Dobbies. They've got an amazing range of these little bedding plants in these tiny little cells just wrapped in cardboard. It's a bit like pick and mix. You can get 8 for 10 quid, or they come in these pre-made mixes. I think I got 4 of them. I got the red, the pink, purple and blue. And I'm going to mix and match them. First thing I did is just take them out of the packaging, rearrange them into the different varieties. In each basket I'm going to be adding 4 plants. Last year I put in 3 of contrasting colours. This year I'm going to stick to the same colour palette but get my texture and difference from different shades and different size of foliage and flower. Hopefully that'll be nice. Then I arranged them in each basket. So before I planted them, I could see I was happy with the colour combinations and variations of foliage. I do have a few left over, but I'm going to keep them and grow them on in individual pots, and then I'll either put them in my rainbow planter or just individual pots scattered around the garden where I need them. So once I was happy with which plants were going in which baskets, I went ahead and potted them up. On the cardboard insert they come in, little cell thing, I just like to cut that into a point and then stick that into the basket with each plant, so it's easy for identification later on. And that way I'll know if I want to grow it again next year. Once they're all planted up, I watered them in and hung them up in the greenhouse. And they will stay in the greenhouse until much, much better weather. Probably until at least the last frost has passed, which is usually by the end of May. Or if I do want to put them out earlier, if I know there's going to be frost forecast, I will take them back into the greenhouse. Take no chances, lose no plants. Also while at Dobbies, I picked up some plants that are on sale because I need some evergreens for the garden. So again, in the better weather, I will get them planted outside. I did buy 3 grapevines last year, all bare root. They were delayed in the post, however. So as soon as they arrived, I did soak them in water, did get them planted up, but none of them have survived. So this year I've bought a potted grape, variety flame, so it should be red grapes. I thought I was going to plant that outside the greenhouse, but now I'm thinking I might plant it in the greenhouse next to the avocado. I have yet to do that. That's another job for nicer weather, I think. Because I live in the northeast of Scotland, I think planting it inside will give it maximum warmth in the summer and in the winter, because it'll protect it from the cold and the snow and the wind most of the year. It still gets bloody cold in this greenhouse because it's just, well, it's just a cold frame really. As for an update on the avocado, this particular avocado I started 3 years ago from food waste. I do have some videos on my avocado growing progress. I shall link those in the description box if you want to watch those later. The first year I just grew them inside for a full year. The second year I took them outside on the decking to grow outside in the summer. Then when it got colder I took them into the greenhouse, popped them on the heat mat just in here and let them grow over winter, and that went really well. However, one of them died. The other one that did survive is now planted in the greenhouse. I did that at the start of last year in spring. Now all summer it absolutely thrived and was looking brilliant. The end of autumn I think I should have been a bit quicker to wrap it with a heat mat to protect it from the frost and cold. Might have been a bit delayed with that. It's obviously all dried up, so I've now cut off all those leaves, cleared everything off, cut off all the dead bits, well, as much as I'm willing to cut off. The dark pieces go so far down the plant now, it'll be what it'll be. But there is looking like there's life growing on the main stem of the plant. I'm going to leave that avocado with the heat mat wrapped around it and turned on until we're into the spring and summer weather, and there's definitely not going to be any more frost. So I've given the avocado a good feed and a good watering several times now, and I'm going to continue to pray to the gardening gods. At least my next door neighbour has chopped down all the big trees now, so at least I'll get a lot more sun in my garden this year. Never been so chuffed to see a tree getting chopped down. Now I just have to hope and pray that they cut back the hedge. Oh, to get rid of that massive hedge would be wonderful too, fingers crossed. I've also started off the first of my seeds. So I've got heat mats down with a propagator on top. I prefer to use the big seed trays over the little seed trays. Every time I use the little trays, they just kind of break apart and it's hard to get the seedlings out when they grow. So I've filled them with the same pot and mix I've used for the hanging baskets. Added the seeds. First up we've got the food waste chilli seeds. I've just saved these from food waste. Then we've got prairie hot chilies. And then I've got loofahs. I did try to grow loofahs last year. They started off great, and then I think the cold weather killed them off. So I'm determined to try them again. I've heard there's two ways to do this. Apparently you cut off one of the ends to help them germinate. I think you are supposed to pop them in a paper towel that's damp, let them germinate and then plant them. I've decided to do a bit of an experiment. 2 of the seeds I've cut the ends off and I've just whacked them straight in the compost, and 2 I have not cut the ends off and just planted them as I normally would any seed. We've got a pea, variety Hurst Green Shaft, and the dwarf French bean, variety Safari. I've planted a few of these in each cell because these are going to be the start of my successional planting. So I'm hoping to plant these once a month. Added some labels, added some soil on top, watered them in, added the lids, and also added some grow lights. Once the peas and the beans are big enough, I shall replant them into planters and leave them in the greenhouse for them to grow through the spring, because I think it's a little bit too cold to put them out in the wilds of the garden at the moment. I think I planted those on the 22nd of February and they're growing up really nicely. I'm really pleased with how they're coming on. The chilies are just starting to germinate. The loofahs, the ones I did not snip the ends off, are growing brilliantly. The ones I snipped the ends of the seed off, not so great. The peas and the beans are starting to grow up nicely too. And if you've seen the news in the UK recently, we seem to have had a bit of a shortage for green stuff and tomatoes. So I thought I'd go ahead and plant some lettuce and some spinach. Again, heat mat, propagator, and I've just got these trays so I can sprinkle in the seeds because it's easier. So first we've got spinach, variety F1 Amazon, and the cos lettuce, variety Little Gem. And I've just sprinkled them in. Popped some soil over the top, watered them in, popped the lid on. I only planted these a week ago and already they're sprouting. Probably do need some light though because they're looking a little bit leggy. More like microgreens or like little baby leaves. I thought I'd use it for that because I'm not quite sure how well it'll grow without good lighting at the moment. And in the next couple of weeks I will be starting the rest of my seeds that I want to grow in the greenhouse, along with maybe some flowers and some things for the raised beds. But I'll leave that for the next video. Of course, for all my seeds, I will be using that same potting mix this year. For starting all my seeds, I always use heat mats now. It just keeps the temperature ambient, stable. It just helps them germinate so much more easily, and especially having the propagator lid on, some lighting. My heat mats and lights are just cheap off eBay. Just have a little search. You can get more expensive ones, but I've just got the cheap ones. They seem to do the job just fine. The heat mats I leave on 24 hours a day. The lights actually have a timer switch on them. You can time these lights for 3, 9 or 12 hours. So I think I've got these ones on at 9 hours at the moment, just because, well, it's snowing. Sunset's about 5:30 at the moment, so it's still pretty dark a lot of the day. As everything grows up, I will just transplant it into bigger pots and then slowly lift the lid off just to acclimatise to the greenhouse temperature and hope for an early spring. Or another full spring, no doubt, that'll be it. Do let me know in the comments down below what you've started growing so far this year and how it's going. And if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a comment, share and subscribe. Of course, subscribing is optional, but it is very much appreciated. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye! It's supposed to be a March gardening video. Well, it is a March gardening video, it's just that it's winter again. Or it very much feels like winter. It's very pretty though.